The First Lady feeling a thing, we've attached an alarm system to her leg to detect any cover-up remarks.
Give us some explanation, given that a cattle contract at the time, just one contract was $1,200, for the mystery of the $5,300 that was made really in the course of one day or at least a few days in the first trade.
No, I can't. I do not remember any of those details.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rush Limbaugh.
Thank you. Good crowd. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's good. That's good, please. Thank you all very much. Folks, we have, except for one guy who's been here before, we have a first. Since our first night ever, which was over a year and a half ago, we've got an entire virgin audience here tonight. I realize that some of you moral police out there think that what I mean by that is that everybody in this audience has never had sex. I know that's what... How can he talk about their private lives that way? I know you're out there. No, these are just people who've never, ever been to the program before, and it's always exciting when most of the audience has not been here. Glad you're all here. Welcome. We've got another full week of broadcast excellence in your face straight ahead. And we're going to have a segment tonight on Mrs. Clinton and her press conference, which was suspiciously scheduled on Friday afternoon while the death watch was underway for President Nixon and while her husband was conducting his own press conference on Bosnia and after the Rush Limbaugh radio show was over. But we're not going to let her get away with this attempt to have this press conference go for the most part unnoticed. But until we get there, a couple of other things in the news here. First off, this is, you know, I always talk to you about why whitewater is important and why examining the credibility and the honesty of the people in this administration is important. People always say, but Rush, all that stuff happened 16 years ago or 5 years ago or whenever. The fact of the matter is that's not true. It's happening today, it happened yesterday, and it'll happen tomorrow. We're talking about the misrepresentations and the falsehoods and the lies. The things that these people have done while governing is of profound interest to me and ought to be to you. And I'm simply trying to convey my interest to you in, I hope, a persuasive way. One of the things I've always been concerned about, we've talked about it most recently in the case of the smoking police, and that is that there just isn't every day a very slight encroachment on people's liberty and freedom in this country, and it's being done under the guise of protecting you from yourself or from your boss or from your neighbor. That if the federal government doesn't move in and take immediate steps, you're going to die or something terrible is going to happen to you. The latest example of this took place a week ago, Monday. The Labor Secretary, Robert B. Reich, there he is there on your screen. The guy blew into Oklahoma. He just flew into Oklahoma City and just with a temporary restraining order. Nothing more than a temporary restraining order shut down the Dayton tire factory. An undercurrent of displeasure was recently expressed by the audience there. Now this place, they had a death there in, I think, 1978. And Secretary Reich decided on his own that working conditions there were not healthy for the people who worked there. But the people who worked there made a lot of money. They're some of the highest paid people in Oklahoma, I think $16 an hour. And here is what he said. Take a look.
When that company continues to expose its workers' life and limb to serious hazards, we will take all necessary action. We're going to throw the book at them.
Now, I'll tell you, folks, that ought to alarm you. That's the federal government marching into a business with a temporary restraining order. Do you know how easy it is to get a TRO? You simply go to a judge and say, I want an injunction against this activity or that activity, and they're just handed down. They're stamped like rubber stamps. It just happened without any consideration. Then the next day, you have a hearing on the TRO. And the next day, they did have a hearing on the TRO, and a federal judge found that Secretary Reich had absolutely no justification in shutting down the plant. Well, this caused me to be suspicious, look into what is going on here. And I found that there is a bill moving through Congress now. It's where it stands now, the Education and Labor Committees in the House of Representatives, so it's moving its way through Congress. And it is a bill that would add to OSHA. Now, if you own and operate a business, you know how punitive OSHA restrictions and regulations can be. You know how costly they can be. Here is a paragraph that details some of the proposed changes to what is now called KOSHA, which is a comprehensive OSHA. Now, read along with me here, folks. KOSHA would authorize OSHA to require immediate abatement of or remove employees from exposure to alleged imminent danger situations. Alleged. That means somebody could just, in Washington, could just suspect that there is imminent danger. Just allege it, and they could go in and shut down a factory like this. It would provide OSHA with the sole discretion to shut down any condition or practice deemed an imminent danger by OSHA, thereby eliminating the U.S. District Court's present independent adjudicatory role of evaluating the correctness of OSHA imminent danger claims. It can be fined up to $10,000 to $50,000 per day. What this means in real terms is, Reich goes in there with his temporary restraining order and shuts down this factory. The workers are told to go home. The next day, a federal judge looks at the temporary restraining order, says it's not justified, and they reopen the plant, which happened. If this thing passes, the judge would have no authority to overturn the temporary restraining order. These people could just run in and shut down your business, folks. And that's why all this health care stuff is important, because it's not about health care. It's about changing the American way of life. It's about changing the role and expanding it that the United States government has in your life, your individual life, as well as that of your business. Another clip here I want to show you. How many of you have ever eaten Ben & Jerry ice cream? Anybody out there eat Ben? How many of you like the stuff? You like it? All right, I'm going to show you the Ben of Ben & Jerry from a clip last week. Watch.
This is a business conference. All right. Here's $1. The message on the back says, "In God we trust." Bullet. In weapons we trust. There is very little that is godlike about my country's actions, and that's the problem. What we have learned at Ben & Jerry's is that there is a spiritual aspect to business, just as there is to the lives of individuals. As you give, you receive. As your business supports the community supports your business. As you help others, you are helped in return. For people, for business, for nations, it's all the same.
Sounds great, doesn't it? We'll tell that to the people of Bosnia. Tell that to the people around the world who are dying at the hands of enemies who are begging the United States to send in weapons, begging us to send in arms and ammunition to help them out. And what are we doing? Exactly what this guy wants. We're turning it over to the United Nations. We're waiting for permission from the United Nations to go do what this guy wants done. It's a world governed by the aggressive use of force, and he can sit there and moralize all he wants, but to act ignorant of that is to just get more people killed, not to save more lives. Quick break. When we come back, we'll show you some of Hillary Clinton's press conference and explain to you why it really happened right after this. Welcome back. Rush Limbaugh having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Now, let's go back to Friday. It's 4:45. That's 3:45 Eastern Time. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there is Mrs. Clinton in the state dining room of the White House conducting a press conference. At the same time this is going on, the press is covering the final hours of Richard Nixon's life in New York, and her husband, the president, is having his own press conference about Bosnia. The Rush Limbaugh radio show for the day is over, and there will be no live Rush Limbaugh TV show taped that night. Heading into Saturday, no extensive coverage generally takes place on the weekends, so it's clear that they wanted to get this done within a certain time frame and within a certain time guideline. Now let's look at the setup. We found a picture in Saturday's New York Times. This is an exclusive New York Times picture. Now I know that's tough for you to see, but let me point something out to you about it first. Now there's Mrs. Clinton in the lower left. Now wait just a sec, folks. Hang on a minute here. She's sitting down on it throne-like, in my opinion. Now this is wait, this is a press conference. Normally you stand at a podium, you take questions. When you sit somebody down like this and elevate them above the audience, you accomplish two things. You have a regal sort of setting, as though royalty is in your presence, and you make it look like it's the Oprah show. You make it look like it's a daytime TV talk show, which is what these people are all about. Now, go back to the picture and take a look at Honest Abe. That's Abraham Lincoln up there with the identical pose that look at this. Now, this is clearly staged. You might say, but Rush, they all stage. Fine. So do these people then. Don't think they're any different. Don't think they've rolled into town on a white horse of morality and virtue and that they're different. That they're new Democrats, they're new this. They're the same old people just like anybody else that's ever been there. They stage things for effect. Now, before I get to the video of this, I want to set some things straight. I have no quarrel. See, we're in the midst of a generational change in America. And it's highly unlikely that we're going to have a president elected in the future years who has a wife who doesn't have her own career. And it's not reasonable to expect that a future first lady is going to drop her entire life's work to sit there and do tea parties, and nobody's asking for that. But Mrs. Clinton came to this press conference and attempted to deceive. She attempted by wearing pink and sitting there demurely with her hands clasped and her legs closed at the knees to put on the impression of the age-old first lady. What is so funny about that? I didn't mean anything by that. I don't know what they're laughing at. I didn't. But she's sitting there like Eleanor Roosevelt would, or like Nancy Reagan would, when in fact, ladies and gentlemen, in fact, this woman is one of the most activist first ladies we've ever had. She is intimately and daily involved in the implementation, formulation of policy. Yet here she was, acting like she's just a first lady. What was going on here was a pure example of the deception that this administration is so famous for. Now, let's get some clips. There was a question. Mary McGrory asked it. We have the question and Mrs. Clinton's answer. Watch and listen to this carefully. Question's tough to hear, but listen up.
How would you account for the decline in the support of the Clinton health plan? Do you think that the suspicions and questions which have come out of these matters has spilled over on that and affected people's ideas about just how honestly and efficiently government can deal with life or death?
Mary, I think that's a real important question. I do believe that some of the opponents of health care have certainly tried to use Whitewater as a proxy for their opposition to health care. I think that in the last several days, some of the leading opponents of health care have even said things which seem to suggest that. I find that very regrettable. I mean, if someone wants to argue about the future of health care in our country, I think the debate ought to be about health care, and I have absolutely no problem with someone saying, I don't like alliances, or I think we ought to have a different benefits package. That's what I believe democratic debate ought to be about. But I do think that some have tried to use this to undermine support for health care.
I wonder who she might be talking about. I wonder who could it possibly be that who in the last few days has sought to link Whitewater to health care. You do?
Yes.
We know on this show who she's talking about?
Yeah.
We know who did it?
Yes.
Well, by all means, let's find out who did it. I think Whitewater is about health care. Whitewater is about Bosnia. Whitewater is about crime and welfare reform, and I'll tell you why. Character, the issue of character was put on hold during the 1992 campaign. Nobody cared about it because so many people were upset with the economic situation they wanted to change. And it's now coming home to roost. Most people think that health care is a good idea, but they haven't read the plan. They're taking the president's word for it. Now, I think if the president's word is what we're going to rely on for his policies, this isn't a debate in the arena of ideas, and this is the man setting the agenda. And if people are going to base their support for the plan on whether or not they can take his word, I think it's fair to examine whether or not he keeps his word. This is not about getting rid of the president. This is about people who would like to stop health care in a legitimate democratic sense, try to compete for the minds and hearts of the American people, the basis that maybe what the president's saying isn't true. So that show airs Tuesday night. Thank you. That show airs Tuesday night on Nightline, and 3 days later, they bring Hillary out to answer it. Now, my friends, if I wouldn't have been on that show, nobody would have linked Whitewater to health care, because nobody has. I'm the one who has done it. Now, let me tell you, I happen to know what they think of us, you and me and all of us in the White House. They think that this show and my radio show are not seriously taken by people, that we're just a bunch of fanatic extremists here and you're just a bunch of mind-numbed robots. What brought them out, hold it a minute. What brought them out, there I was on Nightline. Now, they take that seriously. This is a mainstream news show. Here's somebody on Nightline saying they lie. Here's somebody on Nightline linking Whitewater to health care, and health care is what they really care about, and that brought them out. And what more can I say? This is what I mean when I say I'm serving humanity. Back with more right after this. Okay, we are back, and I want to stick with health care for just a second because there are some things being said now that finally illustrate the truth that has always been present. It's just never been admitted to. Dan Rostenkowski, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, went up to the Kennedy School at Harvard last week, made a speech, and this is part of what he said, and you'll find it most interesting.
But I predict that we'll need a substantial amount of new revenue, tens of billions of dollars a year, when the new program is fully in place.
Really?
That means that broad tax increases may be required and that everyone may have to make a tangible contribution to finance this program.
No kidding. Contributions is back as tax increases. I want to show you Mrs. Clinton, though. Mrs. Clinton from March of 1993. Let me know, Sandy, when we're ready on that clip. This is Mrs. Clinton talking about health care in March of 1993. Take a look.
There should not be the need for any large tax increase. The president has ruled out any kind of middle income tax increase to pay for more money going into the same old system.
Wise up. Folks, how many times do we have to show you all this? You are about ready to get soaked if this plan, their plan, sees the light of day. Quick break. Back with more right after this. Hi, welcome back. Rush Limbaugh saying what needs to be said, saying what few will say. Richard Nixon passed away on Friday. And a mixture of emotions has been heard over the weekend. His enemies have not been contrite. His enemies are still angry. He evoked a lot of emotions in people, but I'll tell you what, folks, in manner and style, he was presidential, as you will see in this video.
Services provided and promotional fees paid by the following.
The authentic GOP baseball cap. Wear your true colors with this wool blend cap that's fully adjustable and American made. Call 1-800-97-TRUTH.